Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Malika's Corner. This is your host, Wankumbu Mukumano. I know that today is a very different and exciting episode, and I'm so excited because you guys are about to hear from my amazing two Zambian sisters, friends, colleagues, everything. So I'm excited for you guys to meet them and to get to hear from them. And today's episode is a very, very exciting episode. It's something that we've all been waiting for, and I've received a lot of feedback from you all about how you've been waiting for this episode, waiting for the actual mental health episode. So this is the day. And today I am joined by two amazing ladies, and I will let them introduce themselves, but their names are Suwilo Namfukwe and Change Kwesele Malama. I hope I said that right. So I will let you guys introduce yourselves. We can start with you, Suwilo. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, what you do, your favorite sport, favorite food, any of that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wankumbu, for having me on your show. I feel so honored to be a part of this episode and that you chose to ask me to be a part of this. So thank you so much. As Wankumbu said, my name is Suwilo Namfukwe, and I am a clinical mental health specialist. I live and work in Lusaka. I recently just opened my own private practice called Elevate Wellness Solutions. We actually officially opened at the beginning of this month, so that's really exciting. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing here in Lusaka. After having worked for many years in the corporate world, I decided to take a break from that and start doing some private practice. So,
Nice.
yeah, I don't know if there's
Exciting.
anything else you want to know. You're more than welcome to ask as we go along, but that's
Yeah.
me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here and congratulations on your new agency.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's exciting. That's exciting. And I would definitely put down your information, your email, so people can actually reach out to you if they actually need some more information or some assistance. So yeah, thank you so much
That's
for
great.
that. Yeah. And then Miss Change, it's your turn.
Thank you so much, Wankumbu, for having me. Obviously, I'm honored to be here with you, to be here with Suwilo. My name is Change Kwesele Malama, and I am a final year doctoral student at the University of Michigan, and I'm a joint student in developmental psychology and social work. And something I guess that's interesting about me is that I'm training to be a therapist. And so I just finished my clinical year. And so that's something that I'm very excited about. And I am now here in Toronto, Canada. That's why we live now.
Oh, nice. I know it's very cold out there, so thank you so much for being here as well. And that's exciting. And good luck in school. I know you do great. You'll be an awesome therapist. So, yeah. And let's see. So I will dive into some icebreaker questions so that way we can kind of know a little more about you all. And yeah, so these are just random questions. So let's see. And feel free, you can either one of you can answer. So it doesn't have to be in any
Okay.
order. So okay. First question. Let's see. As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a good one. I'm going to let Change go first on that.
Okay.
To be honest, the first thing that comes to mind is a doctor. um, Yeah, I think a doctor, but also I think as a child, I had those African parents who at that point when we were growing up were like, as a child, I just dibbled out, just did different things, you know.
Mhm.
But I would say doctor because that's what I saw, but I don't think I really knew what I wanted.
Right. I feel like that's almost every Zambian kid. I think our parents always wanted us to be either a doctor or something big, some engineer. So I feel you on that. That was me. Awesome. Okay, Miss Willow.
Okay, so when I was a kid, I kind of went all over the place, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
about what I wanted to do when I grew up. But the very first thing I wanted to be was either it was gonna actually a cross between. I wanted to develop kind of
Mhm.
like a cross between being a ballerina and a tap dancer.
Ooh.
So
Ooh,
I had
that's
these tap
different.
shoes. I just randomly had tap shoes. I don't know where I got them
Uh-huh.
from, but and they were the only thing I had. So I worked in that with the ballet thing and wanted to do
Oh,
that. Wanted to be a ballet cross tap dancer.
nice. Hmm.
That lasted for a little bit, and then I wanted to have a mango stand outside of my yard,
Oh,
which
okay.
which I attempted to do, and my father very quickly shut it down. He is like, "You are not selling mangoes at the side of the street." I feel like I could have been a multi-millionaire right now with a shop, with a
Hey,
supermarket in Zambia,
you never
Zambian-run
know.
supermarket.
Yes.
But yeah, it got shut down.
Mango
So
juice.
I
Hey,
know,
mango pico.
dried
Hey,
mangoes. So many different things we could have done with that. But
yeah,
yeah,
that's different. I've never heard anyone say that, especially as African kids.
it's
That's
true.
cool though. You never know where that would take you. So, okay, next question. If you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh gosh, I can go first. If I had a superpower, I would probably want to be able to travel at the speed of light
Ooh.
because I love to travel, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it would be make it really easy for me to get from one place to another. And so, yeah, I think that would be what I would choose to have if I could choose any superpower.
I
Nice.
knew Suila was going to say that. I would say the same thing. I think if you could snap, my family is all over the world. And,
Uh,
I get tired of my sister-in-law being like, I say good morning and she's like, it's afternoon. So just if I could be somewhere, within a few minutes, that would be my
Yeah.
superpower as well.
yeah.
Ah, nice. Okay. That's
Great
some pretty
minds,
cool
Change. Great minds.
superpowers. Yes. Those are really, really cool. I have one more question and then we'll dive into the topic. Coffee or tea?
Both.
Both.
Definitely tea.
Tea. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are just some random questions that I thought, it's good to know each other. So, coffee or tea? I would go with both too. Because at first, I wouldn't say I never liked coffee to begin with.
Yeah.
I hated coffee because it was too bitter, the taste. But then going into grad school, I loved coffee because I was like,
Mm.
yeah, I need to stay up late. So, hey, coffee is my go-to now. So I would take it even at night because it works. So thank you again, ladies. So we'll, I guess, go right into our topic today. And so our topic's title today is mental health stigmas and how to break the barriers of mental health stigmas in our
Mm.
community, mainly African Zambian communities. And this is both here in the diaspora and back home in Zambia or other African countries. Um, and the goal for today is for us to learn more about mental health illnesses and just mental health in general, mental well being, just in general, learn more about it and also raise awareness, helping others become more comfortable to openly share about mental health. Could be mental struggles, mental illnesses, or just the topic itself. Just being able to open up and share. Because I feel like in our community, we don't really, I mean, mental health is still a topic that's still kind of frowned upon or not really accepted. And it's sad to see that. And I think for us, being able to have seen this, lived abroad and seen how mental health is handled, I think it's been an eye opener for us to see how it's done over here and how can we also bring that education, that awareness to our people back home. So that's the main um, goal and topic for today. So I will just randomly raise a question, and either one of you can answer that question, and we can just jump off of each other and ask other questions. So, the first question that I have today is a broad question. What is mental health? Because I feel like sometimes we just throw out all these terms and definitions, and people don't really know what we're talking about. So I feel like it's nice to start at the beginning. What is mental health? What, because I know other people describe it differently. So to us, what is mental health to you? So anyone can jump on that.
I can start. I think with mental health, we often talk about, I guess there are all these broad, sophisticated terms used with mental health, but I think first and foremost, we all have mental health, right? It's not something that's like, oh, I don't have that. So when we talk about mental health, we're really talking about our thoughts, our feelings, you know, and our behavior related to those thoughts and feelings. So really our well-being, you know, our emotional well-being, you know, our psyche, how well are we, you know, are we able to function on a day-to-day basis? Are we able to do the things that we love to do the things that we normally, you know, would do? That, so when we're talking about mental health, that is mental health. It's not just, it's not just illnesses, but really how we function. How is our well-being?
Nice.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add to that. I think Change explained that perfectly. I think the reality of it is that all of us are experiencing either mental health or mental non-health, you know,
Right.
or somewhere in between. And that is just what's going on in our minds. What are we thinking about? What are we feeling? And how is that translating in the behaviors that we're exhibiting with our friends, with our family, in our relationships, at work? How is this then impacting in our day-to-day lives, as Change said? And all of us are impacted by that. There's none of us that goes through any day without thinking about stuff, feeling a certain way, and then having it translate in our behaviors and our actions and our interactions with others. So I guess in a nutshell, it's the thing that, you know, drives or is behind our existence and our interactions with the world around us. So yeah.
Nice. That's a really good point that you all have touched on, the fact that we all have mental health. Everyone has it. There's no one person that doesn't have mental health or doesn't go through something, and that's a really good point to touch on, because I feel like most people, when you talk about mental health, they think, oh, that's not my problem, it's somebody else. So it's someone on the street, as we've grown up seeing back home, someone that's mad, or so it's actually a good point to say that you've raised, that everyone goes through mental health. We all do, on a daily basis. We all have feelings, we all have emotions. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So we'll go into the second question. What are the mental health stigmas in our communities? So as we've talked about, yes, we now know what mental health is. What are the stigmas from what makes people think, well, it's not my problem? The statement we just made before. What are those stigmas in our community?
Yeah. I think I can go ahead and kick that one off. And I'll just speak solely from the experiences here in Zambia. And I think maybe I'll let Change touch on even just in the diaspora, what it's like there. But I know here in Zambia over the past 8 years, so I've been back in Zambia for 8, going on 9 years now. And I think a lot of the stigmas are global, and some of them are definitely unique to our cultural context and Zambia as a country. But I think, number one, it's first and foremost, it's so easy to be able to say to someone, I have malaria, or, I have broken my leg, because some of these things are a little bit more tangible. But how do you put words around something like, I feel extremely sad to the point that I'm thinking that life isn't worth it.
Right.
And a lot of times for people, when you're unable to classify something in something that makes sense, you can feel shame, you can feel guilt. And so a lot of the not wanting to accept or admit can come from that place of feeling ashamed that I shouldn't be feeling like this. There's no, I mean, what's happening? I don't have a broken leg, no one has died. So why am I crying?
Right.
Or maybe someone has died, but maybe I should be getting over it. And so from an individual level, there can be a lot of shame that causes people to feel like, I'm not going to deal with that. And I'm not going to acknowledge the fact that that's my reality. And then obviously, I think another big piece is just a lack of understanding of what it really is. When we don't understand things, it's so much easier for us to stigmatize it than when we actually do. Like, even take coronavirus, for instance. This is not like, it's not something that is the fault of any one person. Well,
Right.
we could debate that, but with origins. But the spread of it, is so out of our control in many ways. There's ways we can prevent it and things we can do to try and prevent it from spreading. And yet still, you notice, like in Zambia, when people are get a positive diagnosis of coronavirus, they don't want to talk about it, or they feel ashamed, or they yeah, there's just so many things that people avoid them and don't want to talk to them because they're like, oh, you got COVID, so you must have done A, B, C, D. And it's like, no, we just don't fully understand this virus
True.
yet. And so therefore we have a reaction to it that kind of allows us to deal with it as human beings on a level that makes sense to us. So when there's no understanding, or there's a lack of understanding around what mental health is, then people are more likely to have a negative feelings towards it, negative approach to it, stigmatize it, because they just don't fully understand what exactly it is that they're dealing with when you're talking about mental health.
Yes, times a million. Yes to all of that. Yes, 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 yes. When we don't understand, it's easy to make up stories about what it is, And I think in the diaspora, and I think even in Zambia, sometimes when there's one version of what mental health is, Chainama, that becomes the version of what it is for everyone. And I think, to add on to what Suilo said in terms of stigma, that's a huge point about how if we can't see it, if we can't see it oftentimes in Zambia, oftentimes in diaspora, around the world, really, what we can't see, we then say, oh, it's not real, and that's difficult when people are struggling. Then they feel like I can't just open up and say how I'm feeling because nobody will believe me, or I'm a man, in our culture, men are supposed to be strong, the men are not supposed to cry. I know there's an Apochuku song about this, but so all these things that it's stigmatized because it's almost as if with mental health you hear like, oh, we don't have those things in Zambia, or we don't have those things in diaspora. That's a white person thing or a Western thing. But I think the word in itself sometimes is where the stigma is. But if we use other words, Chukonko. Well, when I think about that, depression, right? When you think about other words or other ways that you could kind of think about in our culture. So I think even again with the words, we become scared and we don't want to talk about it. But lastly, I think not just men, but I think we come from a culture where we're not supposed to show when things are sad or things are bad. You're not supposed to show people that. You're supposed to show people, your best face, your best Sunday or Saturday, whatever. If you're Jehovah's Witness, whatever you're out, if you're Seventh Day, your outfit. You're supposed to kind of just show that I'm doing well. My family and I are doing well, and I guess last I can say that sometimes people don't have people to talk to that they can trust. So. And I know, Suilo, you touched on this recently, but if I'm talking about how I'm feeling and then they're saying, let's pray for Vanna so-and-so, and not everybody knows my business. That's Suilo's example from a couple of weeks ago. But that's the problem is people don't feel like they have somebody who they can trust. And so then what happens is people start to ruminate. People start to go through things on their own. And then how can you blame them?
Yeah. That's a really good point. I actually had someone talk to me about, I randomly asked different people about mental health, or like what their thoughts are on maybe getting therapy, counseling, if you're going through something. And one of the points someone told me was trust.
Mm.
They don't trust anyone. They don't trust that people will keep the information confidential, or um, they also don't trust me or therapists. Like I don't even know if I can trust a therapist. I don't know if I can trust. I have no one to trust, and it's like there's that fear of not knowing what someone would do with that information, or people just looking down on them, or like you said, our culture is like, oh, just pray over it, you'll be fine, and it's not really a sickness. You'll be okay. You're just going through something. Give it some time, you'll be fine. So, and how do people break that barrier of, okay, I'm afraid people will say this about me, or I have no one to really trust, or if I tell my mom, she may say, hey, what do the church say, what do the community say, keep this in the house. So it kind of gets shoved under the rug just because of that trust part, or that what do people say. So how do people go about dealing with this specific big stigma, the specific, I don't know if I what to call it, misconception. I don't know. So how do we go about that, or breaking that barrier?
That's a
And
million
I'll
dollar.
allow anyone. Anyone can jump on that one.
I'm looking at school.
It's like Sulo has something to say.
I wasn't sure if you're going to tag on to that. That's the $1 million question with a $1 million answer. Oh man, I let me just say off the bat that for me, this has been by far one of the things that I am most passionate about, and I am most determined to start to change the
Right.
perception, or and
Mm-hmm.
not even the perception, but more importantly the practice of this when it comes especially to our field. So for anyone who's listening to this in Zambia and you feel that if you go to a therapist, it won't be treated with confidence, that
Right.
there's room for that information to get out. Let me tell you that we have a strict code of ethics. Anyone who has been trained as a therapist,
Yes.
and maybe that's where you also have to be extremely careful, that you are going to someone who has the proper training and the proper background, because any of us who've been trained in the field have it's been ingrained in us that confidentiality is so important, and it's
Yes.
important for the very reasons we've already stated, that this process is not an easy one to go through, and it's very vulnerable for the people that are going through it. And so for you to be able to fully engage in the therapeutic process, for you to be able to get the help that you need to talk about the stuff that you need to talk about, you need to be able to trust your therapist. And so for us as practitioners, it's so important that you trust us and that we build that relationship, that I would never think twice about sharing your information with anyone else, be it even if it's prayer, people. I can pray to God directly on your behalf. I am not going to go to Change and start saying, hey, let's pray about this situation,
Right.
or even just to have a casual conversation around it. Now,
Mm.
if you enter into the therapeutic process, obviously there are some exceptions to that, because again, your well-being is the most important thing for us as
Right.
therapists. And so there are exceptions to when we might have to tell someone, but it is always for your benefit and always for your greater good, and you will always be a part of the process. It will
Right.
never come up as a surprise, like, oh, I can't believe you told, I can't believe you told my doctor this. No, I will tell you, listen, I think this is information we need to share with someone else so that we get you the help and the support that you need. So you will always be a part of that process. And anyone who's ever worked with me, anyone who has ever been my client, anyone who has ever worked with me on the same team will know that when it comes to confidentiality, there's absolutely no room for compromise in that. We have to be people of confidence. when it comes to our clients, because it's so important to develop that relationship and make sure that it's a trusting relationship. So please, my Zambian people, if you hear this, know that you can trust professional mental health practitioners to keep your information private. I don't know if you want to add to that, Change.
Yeah, no, I 110%, what Swilo has just said. And I think, and Swilo, correct me if I'm wrong, people do have access to the notes. I know that's something that people don't know, is that when you see a therapist, and I know maybe this might vary by agencies, but you do have the right to say, can I see the notes that you took, during the session or after the session? And that is so important, because if there's something that you feel like, I don't want this on paper, and obviously as therapists, we're trained to say all that we need to. We may not say A to Z of what you explained in session. You might say something more generally, like so-and-so spoke about their family, so-and-so spoke about their professional life. I, as a therapist, I'm speaking to you every day. I have an idea, or every once a week or whenever. But so I think that's also important. People should know that you have the right to see your therapist's notes, but also it is a process, and I think something that I can add to how do we break the stigma is that where you don't trust your therapist, because I know many of us, we don't trust ourselves. We can barely trust ourselves. Right. So that's tough, right? But I think we're as people, we're human beings, where we struggle with trust. That's where I think I don't want to say that's where therapists come in, but that's where we have to learn coping skills, right? Therapists can help with that, but maybe so can a pastor, there are other people who can help with that. Mental health practitioners and therapists have a specific role though, right? There's a point at which maybe a pastor may not be able to help, or a family member won't be able to help. But I think coping skills are huge. And I think that will help break the stigma, where it's like, okay, I can't, I was thinking about this earlier, but like the basics, right? Who, what, when, where, and why, I teach a little bit. So what are my 5 why? What are the 5 W's, right? But who am I around when I feel good? Who drains my energy? What is it that makes me feel good? What bothers me, or what are the things? So just asking yourself, like, just kind of going down that list, where do I feel myself? Where don't I feel like myself? What brings me joy, but also, and why am I feeling this way? And I think some of those things we can start to talk, to be honest, to ourselves about certain things. So again, there's a limit. There's a point at which you might need help, but one of the best things somebody ever asked me, when I was so busy as a student, was, when do you have time to think? And I think what happens oftentimes with mental health is it's like we don't even have time to really think about how we're feeling. Everything just piles on top of, one after the other, one after the other, And so when I have time to think, then I can actually say, man, I think I might need some help. I might need to talk to somebody who's a therapist, or I might need to talk to my mom or a pastor, or maybe I need to journal, or maybe I need to write, and maybe after I journal, I rip it up so I can't even see it again, or I'm gonna sing my favorite song or whatever, just to get back into a place where I feel like I can start to be on the mend. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but we have to start somewhere. And I think sometimes in our culture, and this is why, Swila, I respect so much the work that you're doing in Zambia, because we need to start somewhere, and Wankumbo, that's why I think this podcast is so important, is because we're so worried about what people will think, that we don't even, not that we don't want to be well, but we don't know how to become well.
Yeah. And just to kind of touch on that as well, like a lot of the concern around what people might think, and Wankumbu, you'd mentioned, so what if my mom doesn't want me to go and see someone? What if I share this and they're like, no, you can't share that. That's family stuff. And I think, Matt, I think there's so many of us who can relate to that, the feeling of, I can't talk about that because that was family stuff. And what happens in the family stays in the family. And the funny thing is, for so long, for so many of us, Zambians, Africans, we've had people telling us what our story needs to be, and it has killed us. And so you need to take ownership of your story at a certain point and be able to say, this is what happened to me, and keeping quiet about it is destroying me. And again, this is why coming to talk to someone who you trust is important, because in that process, we can start to unpack your story, not the story that your family told you had to tell to the rest of the world, not the story that your teachers told you that you had to tell to the rest of the world, not the story that, whoever it was, whether it was Hollywood that told you what your story ought to look like as a Black Zambian woman or man. Like, you get to tell your story in this space in its fullness. And that is one of the most liberating things that any of us can ever do. So I understand, hear me when I say I understand that it's so easy to get caught up in the narrative and the story we've been fed for so long. But also hear me when I say that there is a freedom on the other side of being able to know your story that I think all of us, not just the Westerner or the white man or whatever you want to call it, but all of us are entitled to, and all of us should be able to experience in this life. And that's why I think the process of walking with someone who can help you unpack that story is it's huge, it's important, it's massive. So yeah, I get it. I get that it's hard, but we're there to walk through the hard with you. We're there to help you get through the hard.
And one thing I want to add to that is that story is so powerful. And I think one thing that people should know is one thing that we do as therapists is that we recognize and we try to help people recognize when they're backed up into a corner. Oftentimes people are in a corner and then I'll ask them, okay, well, turn around. What do you see? And yes, in life, it's not that simple, but turning around is more so like, what haven't I seen? What option haven't I explored? Who haven't I talked to? So, I do that. We often call them cognitive distortions. It's all or nothing. Everything is bad, or it always happens to me, or it will never change, right? But working with people to see like, okay, tell me your story. Let's get you out of the corner bit by bit. And I think that's what we also try in therapy, is not to rush people, but I worked with people where maybe after 1 year, they now start to feel like, okay, Change is listening to me for this time. And now I feel like I can tell her, that so-and-so killed themselves. And this is how it made me feel. This is how it impacted my life, or so-and-so abused me. And this is how it's impacted my life. And I think I agree. Suwila said, without talking about these stories, without talking about our stories, I think it does kill us as people. Because then you have a whole generation of people, or generations of people smiling, but not really feeling that joy because there's so much pain, there's so much hurt. And I think the work that we're doing, all three of us, is really healing work. It's heart work. I would call it heart work, but because we deserve to be well. And that story is powerful. It's extremely powerful.
Wow. Great points you all have raised there. And just knowing that little bit piece of the story, because I think we as Zambians, Africans, I think the human race, we've gotten used to this, our story, that we forget my story. And that's the part that is mainly important. What's your personal story? And I know, being raised in a Zambian culture where it's a collective culture, we are which is a good thing. Family oriented, very community oriented. It's a good thing. We all need support, but we also have to be able to take ourselves out and know what your personal story is.
And Wankumbu, what you just said is so powerful, because I work with a lot of immigrants, and I see people in the diaspora struggle with that. But people forget, you can't pour from an empty cup. Yes, you are the matriarch. Yes, you are the mother. Yes, you are the father, whomever, the oldest sibling. But if you're not well, we often don't realize what that does to other people, to our children, or to our siblings, or to our spouse. And I think that's where we can still have that Afrocentric perspective is, yes, we're collectivist people. So it's very important, right?
Yes.
Our well-being, our health is very important. And it's in conjunction with other people. If you're not doing well, who else isn't doing well? So how can we then say, what can we do together to feel better?
Wow. Yes. You are so right, Change. Yes. And I don't know if Suilo, you want to add anything else to it before we go on?
Man, I feel like we could keep
we can
going on
keep
this for a
going.
minute. So if you have more questions,
could keep going.
maybe we should move on because there's
But you guys,
we could talk for hours about it.
Yes.
And I think, to be honest, why we're talking, and I knew this would happen. This is why I wanted to talk about it. Is because we're so passionate about this topic that we bury so much. There's so much stigma, so much pain. But if people don't feel comfortable using the word mental health, that's okay. Use other words. Like, this is how I'm speaking. This is what I'm thinking. You know, we get so stuck on one point without actually getting to the root. You know, somebody's like in our country, you know, and in the diaspora, there's sometimes issues with alcohol. Yes, we talk about the symptoms, but we don't talk about the root. Why is this person like that? Why is this person feeling like this? That's why we could go on forever.
Yes.
We care about this.
That's a good point. The roots of the problem. I think we are so focused on the solution that we forget that, wait, where is this coming from? Let's take a step back and figure out why Billy, I'm just going to use a random name, has been an alcoholic, or why is he really drinking? Because I think one of the things is there's that stereotype and, oh, he's just an alcoholic because he's just an alcoholic, or, you know, so people forget that we have to find what the main root is. What's the reason to why Billy is drinking? And in that, it just shows that we care. We want to figure out, fix the problem from the root. Is it because Billy is not, I don't know, doesn't have the job that he's always wanted, or just different issues around that? So I think that's a good point that we tend to forget, even as Zambians or as Africans. So yeah, this topic is it's like you said, we're very passionate about this. So we can go on for days talking about the different stigmas, the different issues surrounding mental health. And like you say, Change, maybe mental health is not the word you want to use. Maybe you don't want to be put in that labeled as, I don't know, mental health person, but you can use something else. Could be just well-being, or just could be you just having positive outlook on life or positive mindset, whichever word you want to use that makes you comfortable. And the fact that you all mentioned that this affects all of us. This doesn't affect your neighbor, your friend. It's all of us. We're all a part of this process. And just because you're fine and you don't have any negative thoughts or situations doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. It's our situation. It's everyone's problem, or So thank you guys for explaining and giving us those answers. So we'll move on to the next, or I guess last question. Actually, I think we kind of already touched on this, on how to break these barriers. Basically, we've already talked about this. There's so many ways we can break the barriers, and I think I would say one of the main ways is also just getting information, that education, asking questions. We can ask questions. We can ask. Now we have more mental health professionals in Zambia, like Suilo right now. So if you're in Zambia and you need more information, you can always ask questions. You can Google who, you can talk to. There's mental health professionals. I don't know if you guys had any more information on what people can do if they need help, or if they're thinking about it and they're actually thinking of talking to someone. Do you guys have any more information on that, or? Yeah. Or maybe resources. Let me put that out there. What are some resources that are out there that someone is thinking of speaking to someone, but for example, they don't have money? Because I know there's the issue of money. It's not always free to talk to a mental health professional, but what are other resources that people can have? What other options are there, both here and in Zambia, or wherever?
What comes to the top of my mind is, and I believe maybe Sweet can speak more to this, but there are sliding scale options. So there are options where you can pay for mental health services based on your income.
Okay.
So the place where I worked, for example, before, we were able to offer services starting at like $25 an hour. Mm-hmm. And there were times when clients were like, this is too much for me. And so we would even go lower and just work with clients based on, what they were able to pay. Okay. So there's that. So looking for services that will allow for a sliding scale option.
Okay.
And I think the next thing that comes to mind is just thinking about your holistic wellness. Sometimes when we think about mental health, we're just thinking about mental health services, but we forget that what we eat impacts our mental health. The exercise that we're getting or not getting impacts our mental health. And I know this is why Suila's organization is so amazing, because it's a wellness organization. But I think that's what people forget is like, so for me, I guess the recommendations or resources that come to mind are my favorite yoga instructor. She's a Nigerian girl, and her name is Babiola. So it's Yoga Babiola is her organization.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link. So yes. I love things like that. Yoga is really important. I think resources in terms of having your favorite podcasts, Malika's Corner, having your favorite podcast and things like that, your favorite song, your favorite playlist.
Right.
But also your go-to people. And I think if there's one or two people who you feel like, I trust this person, but you want to say, hey, it's a pandemic. Can we every Friday have a chat, just to check in with one another, So I think figuring out what coping skills work best for you. I had somebody once tell me that at noon every day, she has a reminder on her phone that says, take 3 deep breaths, just to reset herself. Because sometimes it's a good one. Sometimes the resources that we want are not so much out there. We have resources that are closer to us, Maybe it's like I go to a church and I said I'll go to the group, but it's been 3 years and I've never gone to the group. So yeah.
Yeah. I like Change said, I think there's just so many options that are available to us now, especially in this day and age. So if you're out there and you're thinking, I can't afford the whole therapy thing or to see a mental health professional, start by just looking online and seeing what resources are out there. But I also will be I would also caution against that to a certain degree, because it's kind of like, Dr. Google, they say, where, you have a pain in your stomach and then you Google pain in stomach and then all of a sudden you're freaking out because you're dying of cancer, right? When in reality, you just have gas. So the thing with online is it's not necessarily catered to you as an individual. So you may find a lot of information out there, some which applies, some which doesn't. So just take it with a grain of salt if that's an avenue that you choose to use to help you manage, to help you deal with whatever you may be going through. Yeah, man, Change, I think you hit a lot of them. Trusted people in your life who you feel like you can really trust. Just taking small steps to open up and share with them things maybe that you haven't shared but want to, but tapping into some of those sources that you have available around you. And as Change mentioned, there's, I'm not too sure about how other organizations here in Zambia operate, but for Elevate, we do operate on a sliding scale. So we will work with you. Our primary concern is your well-being. So if you contact us and you're like, look, I need help and I don't know where to get it and I can't afford it, we'll work through that with you. And if we cannot support you at the end of the process, you better believe we're going to do everything in our power to find you someone who can. Because there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of people out there in Lusaka who are available. So we will do our very best to connect you to the right place. It's very difficult for us to give a pat answer and just say, hey, go here, here, and here. I would honestly love for you to just say, hey, let me contact the guys at Elevate relate and tell them my story,
Yes.
and then see what they say. Maybe they can guide me to the
Mm-hmm.
right avenues or the right websites or
Right.
the right classes. And we would love, if nothing else, would
Oh,
love to be able to do that for you. Um,
right.
but yeah, so definitely don't hesitate to ask, and don't
Mm,
hesitate to reach out, because we are
yes.
here for that.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. And I would definitely put all your information, the description, and that way people can reach out to you. And like we said, reaching out is free. You can always reach out. It's free. You can always ask questions. Do not wallow in, whatever you're going through by yourself. You have people. There's always someone you can talk to. So thank you.
And I would say just to that is like sometimes people say, "Oh, I went to therapy 3 years ago. I had a horrible experience."
Right.
And I think that
Hmm.
similarly to classes that we have in school,
Yeah.
there are some teachers that are better than others, and so I
Yeah.
think being willing to just say, okay, this didn't work, but I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try a different organization or a different
Mm-hmm.
person. I think is also important. I think ultimately your safety is important. How safe do I feel
Right.
talking to this person?
Right.
And so, but just giving yourself that chance as well.
That's a good point.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for today. Thank you for all your information, um, and I'm hoping that we'll have you back on the show, because we have so much more content and more discussions that I know people are excited to hear more, and they would love to hear more from you all. So thank you for your vulnerability, your time, and for answering all these questions. And if there's anything else you all would love to add, you can. Is anything else that I may have left out?
Uncle, but why would you ask an African that?
I know. I was like, is there anything else?
Like 3 hours later, we're still
3 hours
here.
later, we're still here. And like, we can go on and on and on. But yes, feel free to add in anything else. Nothing else? You sure, Change?
I would like to add that this
Yes.
is this is unprecedented time for all of us, and I know that there's a
Yes.
lot of people who are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, Kumbu, what you're doing right here,
Mm,
absolutely incredible. And I hope
thank
that
you.
people find this a place where they can start to receive healing, where they can start to
Right.
deal with what's been going on over the past couple years, start to deal with
Mm,
loss. There's been a lot of loss and a lot of
yes.
grieving and a lot of pain. And I
Mm,
hope that it's conversations like these that maybe even get you to start talking with your
mm-hmm.
friends and starting to
Right.
share what's going on with you, because we need this. We need this so much.
Yes.
So it's your initiative on Kumbu, and
Mm,
you're taking this step to get this done that
right.
allows people to start having the conversations that they
Yeah.
need to have. So thank you
Mm.
so much for allowing
Oh,
us to be a
thank
part of
you.
this process with you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. And you're right. We have to
It's
have
true,
these
man. It's true.
conversations. Yes. Thank you so much. And, just adding on to that, we're supposed to be done. I'm still talking to you. So, adding on to that, I feel like one thing about that is, um, even kids go through
Mm,
mental health distress. Some,
mm,
especially during this time, like you said, it's been a rough year now, almost going into
mm,
2 years at this point with this
mm,
pandemic. And with some of our clients tend to be kids. And
mm,
hearing what our
mm,
kids are telling us, being, I'm speaking for like parents or guardians with kids at the homes, it's a good place to actually just ask your kids how they're actually feeling, and
mm,
how they're dealing with the stress that's
mm.
coming with this pandemic. I think this is a great time for us to have conversations with each other, but also not leave
Mhm.
out the kids, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
something that we tend to
absolutely.
forget. Kids also
Mm,
go through mental health issues,
mm,
and for them
yeah,
it's actually worse because they don't even know what's going on, and sometimes they'll react
right.
in outbursts or just
Mm,
shut down. So it's actually a
mm,
good place to have conversations with our kids as well,
mm.
just to make sure that
Yeah,
they're doing okay, and have
absolutely.
conversations with your family members, and just sit down and ask a simple question of how are you feeling goes a long
Mm,
way. We always
mm,
ask each other how are you doing, but an actual how are you feeling today will go a long way. So thank you so much for that and touching base on that. So yeah, thank you, ladies, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much
you'll be.
for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And I hope you all tune in next week for another episode with Malika's Corner. Have a blessed day and talk to you soon. Bye.